How are we feeling in the aftermath of that bloodbath in Boston yesterday? Not good. So let's begin today's show with this poll question because we're going to dive into one of these subject matters here. Should the Sixers trade Joel Embiid this offseason and completely tear it down? T for trade, K for keep. Let me know down in the comment section, and let's start the show and bring the fire. All right, welcome in. This is Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Thank you so much for being here with us. A lot to unpack and a lot to get to on today's show. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, the momentum behind James Harden going back to the Houston Rockets is real. Should the Sixers trade Joel Embiid, and does he want out? New York Post with some interesting stuff on that. And Doc Rivers, is his seat hot? Is he going to get fired? Who are some potential options to take over for him? We're getting to it all on today's show. Before we begin, though, please make sure you help us out and subscribe to the channel. We did watch parties for the entire second round. We were able to really grow the channel, pick up some new subscribers. So if you're here for the first time, hit that sub button, lock us in. We're closing in on a pretty big milestone here of 10,000 subscribers. We are 813 people away. And if you don't know what we bring to the table, this is what we do. And this is why you should subscribe. Year-round Sixers coverage, NBA free agency intel. I'm going to go ahead and say this might be the biggest Sixers offseason of my entire lifetime. We also do a lot of NBA draft analysis. We cover the latest news, rumors. I offer my analysis. And the more subscribers that we get, the more videos that we can do, and the more that we can inform you as Sixers fans out there and grew up a Sixers fan in the Philadelphia area. Hit that sub button. We appreciate it. Let's begin with James Harden here. What a no-show in Game 7. And this was so predictable for a guy who continues to be just an awful player in big games and continues to wilt under the bright lights in some of these massive matchups because this is who he is. In his entire playoff career, he's a guy that when the stage is set and when you need a big victory, he always fails to show up. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, James Harden, quote, very serious about going to the Houston Rockets. Here's what Woj had to say on this fine Monday. Listen, it may ultimately be a leverage play for James Harden. Houston may be his way to get him the kind of guaranteed money, long-term money that he wants from Philadelphia, but I wouldn't underestimate it as just a leverage play. I think he's very serious about returning to Houston. And Philadelphia now, they have a strong relationship in that organization from Daryl Morey, starting with him in their front office. It's going to be a really interesting couple of months for the Philadelphia 76ers. And here's the thing about the beard. I've never really been a big James Harden fan. I think that his offensive style of basketball is somewhat problematic, especially when you translate to the playoffs. I don't like when he exhausts about 22 seconds on the shot clock. And if he doesn't get the look that he wants, he's giving it to somebody who's just waiting idly out on the three-point arc. He's also not going to get as many calls in the playoffs because of the level of physicality that's allowed from the officials as he does in the regular season because the style of game is a lot different. And we saw that as this series wore on. James Harden complained about the officiating. He wasn't getting some of the calls, and because of that, his game was rendered useless. James Harden is who he is, though. We're talking about a perennial choke artist. We're talking about a loser who, when the stage is set, when the lights are the brightest, James Harden never plays his best basketball when it matters the most. And here's the thing about the beard. He is such a gifted basketball player. I give him a lot of credit. Coming out of high school in the Los Angeles area, when he went to Arizona State, it's not like he was this highly touted recruit. It's not like he's the best athlete on the floor with springy legs. He certainly had to work a lot on his craft to become the player that he is. So I respect that, and he's a future Hall of Famer, no doubt. But it's absolutely embarrassing how wide the gap is between James Harden when he's great, a la games 1 and 4, to how bad he is in his lowest of moments, like in games 5, 6, and 7. You simply cannot trust James Harden in a big spot. We kept waiting and waiting last year for him to do it. We kept waiting and waiting for him to do something meaningful in games 5, 6, and 7, and he simply did not do that. And if he wants to come back to this organization and the Sixers want to bring him back, why should we have any faith? Why should we have any trust that James Harden is actually going to show up when it matters the most in the pressure cooker? Because it looked as though he was nervous, he was rattled, and he was scared inside TD Garden Arena when the Boston fans were all over him. Now, you look at his numbers for what he did in the regular season 2 years ago, what he did in the regular season this past year, and how that compares to how his numbers fare in the playoffs as well. Like, I'm not even going to show you the assist and rebounding numbers because they're great, right? What I care about is the points per game, the field goal percentage, and the three-point percentage. Now, to his credit, he worked on his body. He was a lot healthier in year 2 as a Sixer. At least he was with the Sixers for a half year in 2021, 2022. And then this past year was his first full year. But look at the drop-off there with the field goal and three-point numbers. Like 2 years ago, 40%. This past year, 44.1. It drops to sub 40 in the playoffs. And from three-point range, 2 years ago, he was terrible. 32.5. This year, 38.5. But that still also drops off to 37.3. And he just didn't look comfortable the last 3 games of this series when Jason Tatum in the last 5 quarters outscored what he did in the last 3 games combined. Now, it's pretty interesting that James Harden said that his relationship with Doc Rivers is just okay. He also said, look, this is the first year that this Sixers group was together. We went up against a team that has been together for the last couple of years, so he does believe that the Sixers have what it takes to win an NBA championship. But I don't believe that James Harden has what it takes to bring a championship to Philadelphia. The big question and what's concerning him for the Sixers is this. The free agency class is bad. And the Sixers really can't get a co-star for Joel Embiid if Embiid is on this roster unless they make a trade. And the one valuable asset that they have under team control is Tyrese Maxey, who I absolutely love. So another poll question here for the Philly Bulls. Do you want Harden back? B for back, C for see ya for me. See ya. I'm looking elsewhere to try to bulk up this team. If you want to interact with me on Twitter and Instagram, you can do so. Same handle on both platforms, at Chase_Senior. Hit up Elon Musk. I'm going to get the blue check mark back on Twitter here any hour, any day now. You can tell me that you love me, you hate me, that you love the coverage, you hate the coverage, or how I can get better. Please just hit me up, slide in the DMs. As for Joel Embiid's future, could Embiid want out if James Harden does go back to Houston? Because then he's looking around this roster and he's like, Tyrese Maxey, my only running mate? Now I don't have James Harden? Jimmy Butler left because this organization decided to keep Brett Brown, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons over my best friend and Jimmy Butler. They let go of J.J. Redick when I wanted him to come back because we didn't want to pay him. I want out too. This one coming from the New York Post here. There have been whispers that Joel Embiid could want out of Philadelphia if free agent to be James Harden goes back to the Rockets, as has been rumored. But Embiid, who was once repped by Knicks president Leon Rose, is under contract for 3 more seasons. That is interesting and important to talk about here. Joel Embiid and Leon Rose, that connection is certainly there, and the Knicks have been talked about as a destination for Embiid. They have a couple of good young players, but they have a bunch of draft capital. If the Sixers look at the situation and look at this roster and the outlook of it right now, and they say, you know what, we're going to restart, we're going to rebuild, we can maybe retool, let's trade Joel Embiid to the New York Knicks, and let's try to get some assets back. Here's the thought. When it comes down to trading Joel Embiid this offseason, this is why it makes sense. Embiid is 29 years old. He's coming off an MVP award. His value will never be higher than what it is right now. So if you canvass the landscape across the NBA and you at least float out there that Joel Embiid could be available, you could get some really sizable offers back for the reigning MVP. It comes down to what the Sixers' plans are here. Do they want to reconstruct this roster or fully rebuild? And if they want to rebuild this roster, then trading Joel Embiid could make some sense. Here's why. He's 29 years old. He's a big with an injury history. If you look back at some of the top centers in the history of the NBA, once they hit that 30-year-old mark, it's usually downhill from there, and a lot of those bigs, or at least some of them, haven't had a lot of the same injury issues as Joel Embiid. He is not a player who's going to defy father time like LeBron James, who's still hooping at 38, or Steph Curry, who's still putting on the backpack and carrying the Warriors at 35 years old. Embiid is coming off that MVP season. You can make the argument to other teams it's the best season that he's had up to date. The playoff flameout, a little bit concerning, but you can also say, look, this guy was battling through an injury to his knee. That's why he didn't have that lateral speed. That's why he wasn't the same. And for Embiid, he was affected by that knee injury to a certain degree. If you trade Embiid, you get player assets and draft picks back. We're talking multiple first-round picks and a couple of solid to really, really good players. Is there a star player out there? Yeah, maybe not. For an acquiring team, there's 3 more years left on Joel Embiid's contract. So he can still stay in his prime here, and the acquiring team knows that he's going to be a part of that organization if they have title chances and title hopes over the next 3. And if you wait to trade Joel Embiid and his career goes in a downhill trajectory and he gets hurt, then you're screwed because you could have traded him here in the 2023 offseason for a treasure chest of assets. And if he gets hurt, you get nothing back for Joel Embiid as compared to what the asking price could be right now, the height of his value. Should the Sixers trade him? He's the process. And the process, I thought it was going to come full circle in this series. Going into Game 6, they lost it. I knew they were cooked. T for trade, K for keep. Once again, let us know. That's the same poll question that we started today's show with. Let's round out with this. Is Doc Rivers inevitably gone? Doc Rivers has now lost 10 Game 7s in his career. He has lost 5 straight Game 7s. And Doc Rivers, after the loss to the Celtics, as they got blasted by Boston, 17-33 in second-round clinching games. Ladies and gentlemen, that ain't it. And here's the thought with firing Doc Rivers. You could replace him with a couple of really good coaches who are out there and available on the market. Nick Nurse, let go by the Raptors. Kind of a mutual agreement that he wanted to move on. And then Monty Williams, fired by the Suns. So you have 2 coaches here who I think would be really good Doc Rivers replacements, and I just think that Doc's time has come to an end. It is time to move on because you're wasting time if you bring him back and run it back with Harden and Embiid. Then you get to the second round once again, and it's the same story that we've been talking about since 2001 for an organization that hasn't made it to the Eastern Conference Finals since 2001. More than 2 decades. Something has to change, and could a change of scenery or a change of voice help inside that locker room? Here's the problem with Nick Nurse and Monty Williams. They're available. The Sixers can hire them if they fire Doc, who has 2 years left on his contract. But I want you to do yourselves a favor here. Rank these jobs right now for playoff and championship contending teams. You have the Milwaukee Bucks, still have Giannis. By far and away, better player than Joel Embiid, also more accountable. You have the Phoenix Suns. You have one of the best bucket getters in the NBA in Devin Booker. You still have Kevin Durant. You certainly need to bolster up that depth to a certain degree, but I'd take the Bucks and the Suns jobs over the Sixers job. Why is that? The future of this organization is completely uncertain. If you bring back James Harden, you know that he's going to crack under pressure once again. If you don't bring back James Harden, who is going to be the co-star for Joel Embiid? For Embiid, he's 29 years old. He'll be 30 next March. What is his future as a star in this league? And can you win a championship with the guy who's not durable, who's not as good in the playoffs as he is in the regular season, who has a bunch of injury concerns? If I'm Nurse and I'm Monty, I'm looking at the Bucks and the Suns as the 2 best openings on the market. And shoot, would you take the Detroit Pistons ahead of a team like the Philadelphia 76ers because they have Cade Cunningham and Victor Wembanyama potentially if they win the NBA draft lottery, which will happen on Tuesday. Something to think about. Something to think about. Who do you want as the next Sixers head coach? I wish it could be a guy like Jay Wright, but everything that I've heard, my man is loving retirement. Drop me a name down in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, and we're going to continue to bring the heat right here on 76ers Now.